it allows people to actually use the item even if your NAGPRA claim is not successful. And so I thought that was pretty outstanding. One of the things that I thought would be really great is to work with our younger people and universities. There are internships available, and our own people can be placed over in Washington, D.C. to work on projects like this, to replicate these types of rattles. This is another image, and it's just a slice of the actual printed object, just so you can see what it looks like. It's hollow on the inside, but I thought it was pretty amazing just to look at the potential applications of a newer piece of technology that's replicating a very sanctified piece.
Is this the new piece or the
It's the new piece. And if you see the two images side by side, it'd be really difficult to tell which one was which was the newer one and which is the older one. This is the ancient piece. It's still in the box. Very few people get to handle it. And over here is the newer one. And if you looked at them in person, you really couldn't tell the difference. But it's amazing to think of a new skill that some of our younger people can gain and how we can retain our culture and have some objects returned home, whether in a newer form or the original form. Here's a NAGPRA. That is at the Field Museum in Chicago. And I just loved it because it was killer whales, and just the shape of those killer whales are amazing. It's not often that you see so many different rounded shapes in chilkat weaving, and I was drawn to it just for that reason alone. The Field Museum has a really great collection. It's open and available to the public. The earlier pieces that I had shown you of the rattle, those are not for the general public. Oftentimes you need to request permission to go to the offsite repository in Maryland, which is about 20 minutes away from Washington, D.C. But if you give them enough time, they're willing to work with you, and they really welcome and embrace our participation. So anybody who has that opportunity, or if they need contact information, if you plan a visit back east, I'd be happy to help. The last object is a Shuknahari ermine robe. This was at the Chicago Field Museum, and it's not under a claim right now, but I thought it was just so beautiful. There's a handful of these that are out there in different museums, and it's just stunning. And you know, it's pretty rare that you have the opportunity to see something that is so unique, and you see them in historical pictures, and it's pretty thrilling to see them in person.
Does it say what's done?
No, there was really no information that I saw. When I had spoken to Herman Davis, our clan leader from Sitka, he had mentioned that he thought it was a coho ermine tunic, and he also mentioned that there was a handful of them out there. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm really happy to stick around and answer questions, but we just really wanted to share the information that we had with people and try to inspire people to, you know, either continue on with their education or take advantage of these resources that are available to you. Oh, who did?
This lady in the corner there.
Oh,
I think she had a question when I ended your presentation.
right there?
Yeah.
Oh. Did you have a question?
Yes, we have three artifacts right in a row to show you why they're out. The first one was a police blanket. My son, John Feller, was in charge of the blanket. And people didn't understand the thing over there too well. So they thought he was trying to be cheap. All the sweaters and everything. What do you call the dedication of the shape? That turned out really good. They had a ferry there for extra people to talk to. And one of them was a cold, that was beautiful. And now we've got a half-back.
Right.
There's problems with people that people are not an Indian. And I'd like to bring to them that it's history
Right.
People will be looking for this in years to come. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Harold.
He is, and that was fantastic that the Teton Clan hat came back, because our clan doesn't have access to our clan hat. It's in Sitka, and when my Aunt Judy George passed away and we hosted her Ko'if, it wasn't made available to us. And so in that instance, you really feel it. You feel that it's missing. So luckily for us, we're able to have the Kayashikit clan hat come over. So thank you for sharing that. Yes?
Yeah, my name is Bob Mosher. When I was at Sea Alaska, I traveled in Russia, in St. Petersburg and to Khabarovsk. And I had the opportunity to go into their museums there. They're cold and dank and not really well kept. But when I was there, I saw extensive collections of Aleut and Tlingit art and objects. And before Senator Stevens died, I had been working with Senator Stevens' office to try to develop a relationship so that we could try to repatriate some of those beautiful things that they have there. And I was hoping someday that somebody might pick up that work and see if we could repatriate a lot of that artwork that is sitting in dank museums in Russia. I just mention it to you folks because I think it'd be a good project, and I think as time goes on, the Russians are going to need us Alaskans a lot.
Thank you for sharing that. This is Gail. I used to babysit your kids. I'm not a ma'am.
Yes, it just brought to mind about 2 years ago, I was in Anchorage, and I got invited over to this one museum where Denmark returned the battle vest and the Sitka peaks. And we can you get those back, you know?
I don't know about that. I would have to do further research on that.
I don't usually do it at all.
It would have to tie directly back to a clan, and sometimes with the ermine tunic that I had displayed, that would be tricky to show that it specifically belonged to a certain clan. So that's where the challenge kind of comes in.
Yeah, not long ago, the Russians invented the kick-study from Sitka, I think. And
The middle one?
And appreciating what good fighters they were. That was cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was born in Sitka.
Oh, okay. Dinah, did you have a question? Oh, John.
John first.
I hope I'm not duplicating the question because we can't hardly hear the question from back here.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to shed some ideas on trying to clarify on the clan objects. I think the clans have ownership of the objects. And if you're going to duplicate these objects, I really think that it's treading on the ownership. And I really think if the clan ownership is actually okaying the duplication, I think that's where my questions are hinging on that subject.
Right.
So it's similar. We had that similar question relating to Taiwan or China duplicating our objects and coming back to our country and selling it to the tourists.
Right.
So is there some things that you might share with our participants here and maybe clarify that?
Sure, that's a great question, and I thank you for that, John. What I probably should have said in my statement regarding duplicating and using newer technology to replicate pieces, This week, actually, the Duckaway are in Washington DC. They have an education center that's part of the Museum of Natural History. It just opened this week, and they replicated a Duckaway pack, but they did it with the permission of the Duckaway themselves, and Edwell John is down there this week, along with a number of other Duckaway to see that come out. So the original is still at the museum, and the newer piece can be used as an educational component, but it wasn't done without the permission of the clan.
Well, maybe I should clarify. I mean, I'm not speaking for all the Singets, I'm just speaking for a certain aspect of the clan. And I recognize some of the clan objects for what has been brought back to Puna Indian Association and the clans. So I really think that clarifying my question is that each clan has a responsibility to their objects. And I just wanted to open the door and give it some thought.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, Glenn?
Just to follow up on my question on something like that, like the Duckaway they have done copy. Is there a way for the museums to find out if any of the hats that they buy and then copy? Is there a way for the museum to determine if the article or object has been replicated?
That's a tough question. I'm sure they follow certain procurement practices when they acquire those pieces, but how they can determine if they've been replicated before or after the purchase, that's a really good point. I think Diane was first.
Cheese scale. Congratulations for your work.
Thank
That you're
you.
doing great. Appreciation, grades. The question I have is a little different. Do you know of anyone working on developing stronger grave protection laws for our graveyard sites in Alaska, in Juneau and Southeast, or probably for the whole state? There's a problem with the lens view of our grave sites along the villages and even here in Juneau, where people drink on the grave sites, throw drugs on it, cigarette butts, break stones, take their pets to relieve themselves on the grave sites. And it'd be nice to somebody develop stronger laws for protection of our grave sites with the blanket lens. Some of the best laws developed for American Indians is in Oregon. Oregon has some of the strongest, best laws for protection of grave sites, stones, artifacts. I just want to know if you've heard in your circle.
What I have heard of is, sorry to interrupt you, when Bob Lusher was the CEO of Sea Alaska, there was a memorandum of agreement, and that was on how corporate land could be used, because there was an instance in Prince of Wales where human remains were moved from their grave site, and so that's when Sea Alaska really got involved with that. I don't know if that agreement had been formalized. I know it was in the works, and they worked real diligently with their corporate counsel on having that use agreement, trying to maintain ownership of the corporate land, even if it's far away. I actually just wanted to take a minute to introduce Harold Jacobs. He's the Central Council Cultural Specialist who is very successful in having many of our precious objects returned. So thank you for being here, Harold.
In honor of our 4 presenters, we have time built into the end. So what we'd like to do is continue on with our next